There's a certain type of man a woman can't shake from her mind, and he's rare. Not because he's louder, tougher, or overly charming, but because he doesn't fall into the usual patterns. Most men either shrink themselves to be liked or exaggerate themselves to be admired. But what no one really says is this: it's not kindness that unsettles women, it's the absence of control. And the man she struggles to control most is the one with emotional mastery. Not just emotional, not just smart, but clear, composed, and intentional. A woman isn't intimidated by a man who shares his feelings. She's disarmed by the man who understands them, who knows exactly what he feels, why he feels it, and never lets anyone weaponize his emotions against him. She can't rattle him. He doesn't chase. He doesn't people-please. He doesn't sacrifice his truth for harmony. He sees the dynamics clearly, and he plays the game, not to win her, but to stay rooted in himself. This man isn't easily swayed. He doesn't crumble under silence. He doesn't flare up under pressure. He observes. He adapts. He moves deliberately, never reactively. That's emotional intelligence, and when it's combined with masculine calm, it becomes dangerous. This is how you become the kind of man who doesn't get manipulated, doesn't get emotional for nothing, and doesn't get forgotten. The kind of man women remember because they couldn't control him, because he didn't fold, because he moved differently. Let's break down the traits that make emotionally intelligent men so powerful, so rare, and so unforgettable to women. You recognize emotional games, and you don't react. When she pulls back, when she gets cold or distant to test you, most men panic. They beg, they explain, or they shut down and match the coldness. But the emotionally intelligent man doesn't do either. He pauses. He notices the shift, and he acts, not from fear, but from clarity. Women fear that not because it's toxic, but because it's powerful, because it means you can't be baited. You don't dance to emotional strings. You see the play for what it is. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you centered. He who controls himself is harder to conquer than a city. In a world full of men who react fast, who get defensive, emotional, or angry at the slightest push, the man who stays calm becomes rare. While others raise their voice, explain themselves, or try to prove a point, he stays quiet, steady, controlled. Not because he doesn't care, but because he refuses to be pulled into chaos he didn't create. When a woman sees that, she doesn't see weakness. She sees power she can't bend. You don't beg for validation because you've already chosen yourself. You don't seek love like it's oxygen. You value it, you welcome it, but you're not starving for it. You know your worth, and that makes you unshakable. Picture this. You're on a first date. She throws a little jab at your appearance or ambition. Most men nervously laugh it off. But you smile, say, "Interesting comment," and move on. You don't defend. You don't explain. You don't collapse. That restraint is magnetic. It says one thing loud and clear: you don't need to be liked to feel valid. You've already chosen yourself. He who seeks to please will always serve. When you anchor in your own value, no one can take that away from you. You read her, but you don't try to control her. She might be used to using emotion to dominate the moment, but you ask calmly, you give space, you revisit it when the emotion passes. No accusations, just presence. And that patience, it disarms her, because now she knows she can't bait you. You're not playing defense, you're playing chess. You handle conflict without raising your voice. While most people explode during conflict, you pause, you breathe, You ask questions instead of casting blame. You lead the emotional tone. And because of that, people can't escalate you. You stay in control. You don't need chaos to feel alive. You bring peace. And anyone addicted to dysfunction will either rise to meet you or fall away. Either way, you don't lose. You don't fear her feelings. You guide them. You hold eye contact. You validate without submitting. You become her emotional anchor. And slowly, her storms pass. Because your calm becomes contagious. Most women are used to leading the emotional tempo. But when they meet a man who stands in the fire without flinching, who doesn't need to overpower or submit, they feel something rare, respect. Not because you control them, but because you don't try to. And finally, you can walk away without drama, without regret. This is the final form of emotional intelligence, the ability to let go with clarity. Most people break down when a relationship ends, but you grieve privately. You move forward with dignity. You don't try to win the breakup. You don't slam doors. And that terrifies some women because it shows you were never emotionally owned. You chose to stay. And once the energy shifted, you chose to leave. That kind of power is unforgettable. You don't need to raise your voice to be respected. You don't need to beg to be loved. And you definitely don't need to play games to be chosen. What you need is stillness, a mind you command, a heart you understand, a voice that speaks with clarity, not noise. Because when you master your emotions without denying them, when you speak with intention instead of reaction, when you move with calm presence instead of desperate energy, you become a force, not loud, but felt, not cold, but deliberate. A man like that changes the room without speaking. He doesn't just enter, he anchors. He doesn't just attract, he stirs. He doesn't perform because who he is already commands respect. Women don't fear that kind of man because he's cruel. They fear him and crave him because he makes them feel something they can't fake. Safety and challenge, warmth and boundaries, depth without chaos. That kind of presence breaks patterns. It interrupts games. It awakens honesty, even in people who weren't ready to face it. That is rare, that is powerful, and that is needed. So don't aim to be liked. Don't aim to be chosen. Aim to become grounded, sharp, aware, alive. A man who watches more than he speaks. Who listens not to respond, but to understand. Who protects his peace like it's gold and shares it only with those who earn it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be disciplined, patient, driven by something deeper than validation. So take your time. Build in silence. Sharpen your words. Clarify your values. Master your energy. And let the world adjust to your presence, not the other way around. You don't need to be perfect. Perfection is a myth, an illusion that distracts men from what truly matters. What you need is discipline, the ability to do what must be done even when you don't feel like it. You need patience, because the men who leave a mark aren't rushing, they move with intention. And you need something deeper than validation, something stronger than the need to be accepted. You need a reason that comes from within. Vision, purpose, self-respect. Take your time. Don't race against clocks that don't belong to you. The man who builds something real does it in silence, while the world is busy performing. He builds in the shadows. He grows through the chaos, but never lets it consume him. Sharpen your words. Make sure every one of them has weight. Speak less, but say more. Don't explain your existence. Don't justify your standards. Let your presence speak louder than your defense. clarify your values, because when you know what you stand for, you also know what you'll never tolerate. And that makes you impossible to control, impossible to manipulate. The man who knows his worth doesn't shrink himself to be liked. He doesn't chase energy that's not aligned. He doesn't give access to people who don't respect the space. Master your energy, because your energy is your battlefield. If you don't control it, the world will use it. But when you master it, you become magnetic, calm, focused, unshakable. People won't know why they feel different around you. They'll just know they do. They'll feel safe and challenged at the same time. That's when something rare happens. The world begins to adjust to you. You're no longer the one trying to fit in. You're the one everything else aligns around. Because when a man makes peace with his past, finds clarity in his present, and moves with purpose into his future, he becomes a force. He doesn't chase, he doesn't prove, he doesn't explain. Because a man who has mastered himself doesn't just rise, he reigns. He reigns in his silence. He reigns in his peace. He reigns in his ability to walk away from what doesn't honor him. He reigns in his eyes, in his voice, in his stillness. He doesn't dominate. He doesn't perform. He doesn't demand respect. He embodies it. Because a man who owes the world nothing, not even an explanation, is the kind of man no one forgets.